Good morning. Today is January 8th, 2026. It's about 11:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Yahweh Elohim, the God of heaven and earth, the Elohim of the Bible. We are going to be speaking about today briefly because I am under time restraints. Got kid pickup here in about 50 minutes. So, first, civil unrest. Civil unrest at one point in time in this country was not an issue unless there was an actual credible issue that had civil unrest. Anytime a federal or local state officer, men and women of law enforcement in general, are abiding by a code. That code is to enforce federal and state law. The purpose behind federal and state law is to ensure that all American citizens are treated fairly and they are treated the way they're supposed to be, which every American citizen is an equitable person in the land of the free. As I've said on another video, our men and women of, not only law enforcement, but also of the military are a cut above the rest of the world. Not only because they're trained better, their aptitudes are higher, their abilities are far greater than the average militaries of, say, China or Russia or Iran. And being from the greatest country on earth, that comes with not only a dual responsibility of each citizen to ensure the safety of not only themselves, their family, but also their neighborhoods. And it continues to go up from there in layers. I would, not even arguing, but I'm explaining something that I think a lot of general people do not understand. When mainstream media is focusing on things such as the Minneapolis shooting, they're spinning narratives that are false. That does not in any way represent the average common man or woman that inhabit any state in the Union, period. Most people, as in community, they want very similar, if not identical, outcomes. They want safe communities. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to go through an unsafe community. I want to drive through protesters. I want to watch civilians unprovoked going after our men and women of law enforcement. Here's a message to you. If you are going after a man or a woman or Coast Guard, any person who is enforcing United States law, you are therefore by principle the problem. There is never a time that civilians need to involve themselves in the business of men and women of law enforcement. That goes for ICE, immigration, that goes for standard street cops, all the way up to the federal level of Cash Patel. Obstructing justice means that you are, by the very definition, preventing righteousness. You are preventing the law being carried out, because when the law is carried out properly, it is to be done in a safe, sane, and organized manner. Now, I will repaint the picture. If a lot of our financial struggles and unemployment issues all around the nation are stemming from undocumented illegal immigrants that are not only getting paid under the table, circumventing the tax structure, but then they are also being influenced by people such as George Soros, who I am recommending to Cash Patel to be investigated for several crimes against America. Funding terrorist organizations is a very high and very serious crime. So that's number one. Number two, I am confident that George Soros' organizations, he has made his fortune on the unfortunate sector in the European markets, the England downfall of the currency, different types of things. Essentially, they're scams, and they're scams of greed to then fuel his his shadow empire. Because when you have college students who are more invested in partying and all these things that those age appropriate people are doing, people like George Soros and his little shadow army are going out to these places, and they're enticing these kids and young adults, and even if they are adults, but they're not educated in the matter. So they're getting paid $300, $400, $500 to hold a sign, and then they're guaranteed that if they get arrested, they'll be bailed out. And then essentially to these mindless people, right, it's a good deal. Meanwhile, George Soros is sitting in the shadows using these tools so he can make more and more money off of the unfortunate circumstances that happen in the countries that he's meddling in. This isn't even a United States only problem, this is a European problem. Because if you have a philanthropist who's worth $25 billion plus, that gives them a lot of pull and leeway to be able to solicit money to ignorant people to then put a focus on a problem that is actually not a problem, but they're making it a problem. So Kash Patel, I would strongly suggest that we look into George Soros, and at the minimum, he needs to be slapped with some serious fines, and then he also needs to realize that if he continues to go down this road, and if there are any of these shadow people that are gonna be tied back to him or his fund or his hedge fund, they all need to stand in front of a federal judge, because this is not gonna happen anymore. This is absolute beyond sensible. This is not freedom. That is not democracy, and that is not a representation of America as it really is and truly exists. Americans want very common things. That's why we are Americans. We want solid education systems. We want safe schools. We, law-abiding people, have no problem with law enforcement. Frankly, me, Asherah, and the children feel a lot better anywhere we go in the type of world that unfortunately exists right now. We feel better when we see law enforcement at the fair. If we're going anywhere and I see an officer somewhere within range, I instantly feel better. Why? Because I am on the righteous side of the law, and I am not going to impede into that, period. Nor is my family. And why people such as this woman who was now deceased because she felt, for whatever reason, that using a weapon, a vehicle is a weapon. A rock can be a weapon. Look at Cain and Abel. The intent is all that you need. She used a weapon that could have very easily killed one of our police officers, and then we would not have had a good father or a good son or a good, police officer, civilian in his off time. I would have rather her, the lawless one, take a bullet to the chest and perish versus one of my police officers who are showing up to work. They are carrying out orders that are going to be better for America, its citizens, its towns, its everything. I'm ringing. I will be right back. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make here is, if ICE was allowed to go into Minneapolis or any area, Chicago, they all need it, and they were unobstructed, they would be able to speak to individuals, verify their citizenship, and if their citizenship is not found, they are then apprehended, taken to a facility, thus they are processed, and they are sent back home. That's it. That's it. It isn't like we're rounding up illegal immigrants and putting them in the gallows. No, we are sending them back home. If America wanted to be a tyrant, and it could if it wanted to, and essentially keep these people in a Guantanamo Bay situation, because if they're here illegally, then we could literally chalk that up to American infiltration of foreign actors who are trying to do our country and our citizens harm. This is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. If they're illegal, this is not their home. Just 70 years ago, Ellis Island in New York was one of the largest immigration hubs ever. And what was that? That was the place that people who wanted to come to America to live the American dream, they were stopping at Ellis Island. They were taking aptitude tests about the country they want to immigrate to, and they were speaking with people about securing homes and securing employment. 30 to 90 days, immigrants legally that are coming here, legal immigrants are not, if you look at the numbers, legal, meaning their paperwork, they're paying taxes, they are going less than 90 days securing employment, because most of the time legal immigrants are coming to America because they have a purpose. And if someone is breaking in the fence, they're not an honest person. They're not someone I want to employ. They're not someone I recommend any businesses employ. And again, they are to the detriment of the United States. There is zero sympathy for the deceased woman. I don't know who she was in spirit. And I can tell you that her actions prove that. Again, Kash Patel, I say we go after George Soros and we begin investigating that situation and then making it a very, very, very clear understanding to any people that are taking bribes. Bribes are illegal. That is also considered racketeering. It is also considered obstruction of justice. And it is insidious. I don't know about the exact law. Let me see if I can find it really quick. 2 minutes. Okay, so very quickly, I was able to locate. The First Amendment protects peaceful protest, meaning nonviolent, but paying individuals to engage in riots, protests, or anything that ends in destruction is considered a criminal act, as it undermines public safety and the rule of law. Going down further, 18 U.S. Code 2101, whoever travels in interstate or foreign commerce or uses any facility, interstate, foreign commerce, including but not limited to the mail, telegraph, phone, radio, television, with intent to incite a riot, organize, promote, encourage, participate in, carry on riot, commit acts of violence, or furtherance of a riot, to aid or abet. This is where the George Soros comes in. To aid or abet any person in inciting or participating in or carrying on riots or acts of violence in furthering a riot, and who either during the course of any such travel or use or therefore performs, attempts to perform, or otherly overt acts for any purposes specified in subparagraph A, B, C, or D, can be imprisoned not more than 5 years. But trying to fast forward here. Whenever, in this opinion of the Attorney General of the appropriate officer of the Department of Justice, charged by law or under the instructions of the Attorney General with authority to act, any person shall have violated this chapter, the Department shall proceed as speedily as possible with a persecution of such person hereunder and with any appeal which may lie from any decision adverse to the government resulting from such persecution. And furthermore, here's another one that we can chalk up our buddy George Soros. And also, people that are protesting, if you throw a snowball, this applies to you. If you throw rocks, if you are even shouting inflammatory remarks, the definitions of domestic terrorism in the United States law are primarily outlined in the U.S. Patriot Act and 18 U.S. Code S2331. Acts dangerous to life. Domestic terrorism involves acts that are dangerous to human life and violate the U.S. or state criminal law. Acts dangerous to life is what the lady who is now dead did. Intimidation or coercion. Using a vehicle is a form of intimidation. And coercion also could be used to influence others in that area to act the same way. These acts are intended to intimidate or coerce civilian populations or influence policies. These are specifically to the situation, and most of these situations can be applied here. Why? Because they're trying to influence government policy. They're trying to influence entire states. Now, Whiny Tim Waltz, I think you also should be put in handcuffs and sent down to the FBI for processing, because I believe that you, sir, are a domestic terrorist. Many of the radical left, are domestic terrorism. And to be quite honest, Kash Patel would be able to process you people with enough evidence that you would not even be able to elect a piece of gum in the future. Intimidation or coercion. These acts are intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or influence government policy. Again, they're rioting and they're protesting because they disagree with a law and the law being carried out. So therefore, they are being lawless. Territorial jurisdiction. The acts must occur primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Minnesota is a part of the Union. All territories in the United States, including Puerto Rico and Mexico, they qualify. Violence or threats. The acts must involve acts of violence or threats, which can include mass destruction, assassination, kidnapping. And for more detailed legal definitions, you guys can read the 18 U.S. Code 2331 under the U.S. Patriot Act. So, this mayor, I don't know if you're similar there with old Whiny Tim Waltz, but Watts or whatever your name is, right? You want to use profanity? I'm the Lord God Almighty. If I decide to use colorful language, that's up to me. You are an acting representative of a state of the greatest country on earth. I suggest you work with your linguistic experts to find better ways to articulate your point. Number 2, telling federal law enforcement to do anything is way above your pay grade. I highly suggest that you simmer down. And you need to be speaking to your constituents, explaining these things. As God, it's not my responsibility to explain the very laws in which govern the civil population of America. It's your job as mayor, your job as governors and senators, and every damn thing else. Believe it or not, your jobs consist a lot more of getting in front of cameras and talking about how well the potholes look and we're going to reduce the fares of bridges, which I'm happy for those things, and those things are important to me. But what's also important to me is senseless death. People putting themselves intentionally in the line of fire to again incite more riots, more violence, and then to paint a false narrative to the men and women of law enforcement is acts of terrorism. It is acts of domestic terrorism. So, I'm going to take a 5, see if I have anything left. Maybe not, maybe so. But these things need to happen. I will cover Colombia when I come back from break. We're back. So, I'm under time restraints, or I would love to elaborate on this further, and I might just elaborate on that tomorrow. But the fact of the matter is, folks, any elected official, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. You're number one when you are sworn into office, from mayor all the way to president. Your first page job description is enforcing the laws of this land. What separates America from Iran is the law. What separates the heathen from the righteous? The law. What ensures someone's ascension into heaven when they pass away is obedience unto goodness. Any elected official that is not abiding by their job description, in my opinion, and that matters greatly, should be removed from their position. Anybody who is siding with an illegal immigrant, meaning someone has broken into the home of the United States of America and they have said, we piss on your law, we're going to do what we want to do. And then they're going to do what they want to do, and then they try to play the heartstring. That is not how this works. When we're talking about fascism, I would like to give you an example of what that would look like. Fascism would be saying, I, as Elohim, am directing President Trump to send in the National Guard, 50,000 units to protect ICE agents. And in the meantime, we're just going to shut down the entire Minneapolis city under a curfew. And if you're caught outside of that curfew, then you are going to be under arrest and you will be put into a detention center and you'll be processed for, again, obstructing the law. This is called domestic terrorism. And unless we get a hold of it, then we will end up being no better than Iran, no better than China, no better than any of these situations, because what happened to them is they let citizens be mistreated by the U.S. letting illegals kill citizens and infiltrate drugs into our children and allowing people like George Soros to pay for the party. We're perpetuating our own cartel-style diplomacy. It's an abomination, and it is not going to stand. I fully support a temporary fascist movement if that's what it needs, because this is not normal. It is not normal for citizens to impede the law. Good law-abiding citizens rely on the law. They rely on the quick response from the men and women of law enforcement. Just the same as we expect a quick response for our ambulances when someone is in a medical situation. We expect our firemen to be prompt to their duties. As Elohim, I expect our men and women of law enforcement to do the same. If they are feeling fearful of executing their job, then we are having a civilian terror problem, a domestic terror problem. Shifting gears is Colombia. I truly hope that you are going to speak with my president and you are going to see the light, because do not be fooled. If your country is producing illegal narcotics, if you're growing them, if you're agreeing with cartels, if you're being paid by cartels or you're protecting them or anything of that nature, you have a very short amount of time to turn it around and then begin to show proof to your superpower. If you do not, then Colombia will be just another city-state of the Americas, because there is in no reality narco-terror will be eliminated from the Western Hemisphere. That is one of my promises as Yahweh Elohim, the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob, and Jesus, and the entire shebang. That would be me in the flesh. It's not happening. Those drugs are killing men and women, sons and daughters, at an alarming rate. And the ones it's not killing, you might as well, because their lives are being destroyed. Families are being ripped apart. And to be quite honest, these protesters holding signs and these left-wing radicals, I bet you if you were to drug test them, within 95% they are all on drugs, because no one sane does that. Absolutely not. It will be easier to pull a camel through the eye of a needle than it will be to traffic drugs in this country. That's a promise. That's a promise. I stand with the United States military, the men and women of law enforcement, and the rule of law. That is the baseline foundation of civilization versus barbarism. Barbarism in the ancient days and even in the modern days was all about, imagine, quickly, and then I gotta go. So imagine you have a tribe of barbarians, right? They're ancient liberal Democrats. They look over at this nice field and go, yeah, I think I'm just going to walk that field and take all their beans. And if they try to stop us, we're just going to kill them. And if they try to paint us bad in the political spectrum, then we're just going to burn their field. We're going to slanderize those that are growing good crops. As God as I said this, I can be in many, many places at the exact same time. And when I am overhearing conversations of my people, God-fearing people, church-going people, work-going people, tax-paying people, the people that this country is ran for, the good men and women of the land of America, if they're fearful to pull out of their driveway because there are protesters protesting safety, protesting the right way, righteousness, that is a problem. That is a massive problem. You are on notice. Sanctuary cities, gone. There is no sanctuary city. America is a sanctuary for law-abiding people. I love immigrants. Ellis Island has brought us so many absolute geniuses to our land and has fueled innovation. It has fueled exploration. It has fueled so many wonderful components that America has to offer. The difference is they are English-speaking, law-abiding, tax-paying people. That's the difference. Be darned that if my country, our country, even though I am God, I am also an American citizen. And that means that there are specific rights that me, my children, my community, my nation, and all the states therein expect a level of living, of livelihood. We expect a level of being the highest caliber civilization, and that starts at safety. Safety comes with law-abiding. Law-abiding comes with people that belong to this country who know the law. This Fugazi, this lady trying to make a show, she lost her life. And I do not feel bad about it. I am so happy that the officer is back home with his family. That's what makes me happy. I would have been happier if we wouldn't even have these issues. That if the report was coming in, hey, we ended up getting, 10,000 illegals out of Minneapolis. That would have been great news. This is only a headline begun because domestic terrorism. It is terrorism in the homeland. Just as I was instructing Israel that they need to clean up righteousness and the world stage needs to back that, right? Israel didn't do it. They didn't do it to the way I liked it. I left Israel. I mean, I didn't go there in the physical, but I'm saying they obviously were struggling with what they looked like to who and whatever. And there you go. I'll be darned if, as God in America, I'm gonna tolerate this nonsense. So, with that being said, we will cut today's video a little short. I will re-emphasize some other things tomorrow. And then all of South America, you're on notice. So, Colombia, I hope your soldiers there on the border, I hope they're going to be there to support the United States military on the border. Because I wish to have no military firefights engagements. We don't need to. And on that note, when it comes to Greenland, I am more than confident we're going to come to a logical, logistical, actual progress in that. That is not, it doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be in any way. Greenland's our friend. So much so that we want to not only secure Greenland, but their resources. And I, as Elohim, am not going to give dictators and communists and socialists in Russia, China, and Iran, I'm not going to let them progress any further than they already have. They need to start with their own people. They need to begin innovating and doing, they need to clean their room. They need to clean their room. That's a fact. And Mom Donnie, instead of figuring out how you can give New Yorkers free stuff, I suggest you figure out how to give them a good job. Have a good day.